to part 2 of following the relational choices made by the patriarch families, or learning from other people's mistakes. We ended part 1 with the death of Sarah, and we are now into Genesis 24, where Abraham says to the senior servant of his household, "Put your hand under my thigh," which seems like a strange request, but for them that's how you swore an oath. It's like us making a solemn vow with our hand on the Bible, which I'm glad we do that instead. "I want you to swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and the God of earth, that you will not get a wife for my son from the daughters of the Canaanites, among whom I am living, but will go to my country and my own relatives and get a wife for my son Isaac." The servant asks, "What if the woman won't come with me? Should I bring Isaac to your home country?" Abraham says, "Make sure that you do not take my son back there. The Lord, the God of heaven, who brought me out of my father's household and my native land, and who spoke to me and promised me on oath, saying, 'To your offspring I will give this land,' he will send his angel before you so that you can get a wife for my son from there. If the woman is unwilling to come back with you, then you will be released from this oath of mine. Only do not take my son back there." So the servant puts his hand under Abraham's thigh and swears the oath. He sets out for the town of Nahor, Abraham's brother, where he stops just outside of a well with his camel. He prays to God for guidance and a clear sign. And before he even finishes talking with God, here comes Rebekah, who is the perfect candidate, and the daughter of Bethuel, who is the son of Nahor and Milcah, and is Abraham's nephew. The servant hurries to her, asks for a drink of water, which she gives him, and then she volunteers to water his camels too, which is exactly the sign he asked God for. He asks her who she is, and she tells him exactly what he wants to hear. She's Nahor's granddaughter and a relative to Abraham. She runs home, and her brother, a really cool, genuine, honest guy named Laban, comes out to meet the servant and brings him to the family's house. The servant tells them all why he's there, and Rebekah's brother and father, Laban and Bethuel, say this is a God thing. We agree. Take her and go. The servant would like to get on his way the next morning, but Laban and his mother say, "Let her stay with us 10 days or so, and then you can go." The servant says, "Don't detain me. God gave me success on my journey, and I would like to get back to my master. My mission is complete. I need to go." So they ask Rebekah, which I really like that they do. They give her a choice in this. Have a goodbye period with your family now that you know you're leaving, or go and get right into the future God has for you. She chooses to go, and they get on their way. Isaac is in a field one evening, meditating, having quiet time with God, and he looks up, sees camels approaching, and heads over to meet them. Rebekah sees a man in the field approaching them and asks who he is. "He is my master," the servant answers, so she takes her veil and covers herself. The servant tells Isaac all he had done, and Isaac takes Rebekah to the tent of his mother Sarah and marries her. Genesis 24, verse 67 says, "So she became his wife, and he loved her, and Isaac was comforted after his mother's death." Let God write your love story. And they had a good marriage. Aside from picking favorite children, there's no extra wives, slave babies, just the two of them the way it's meant to be. Genesis 25 says Abraham had taken another wife and had multiple children from her. Abraham left everything he had to Isaac, but while he was still alive, he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them to the east away from Isaac. He then died at 175 years old, a good old age, an old man and full of years. So long, Father Abraham. He had many sons. Isaac was married to Rebekah at 40. They weren't able to conceive, so he prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife. The Lord answered, Rebekah gets pregnant, and after 20 years of marriage, she gives birth to Esau and Jacob, who were jostling each other around while they were still in her belly. When she asked God why that was happening, God says, "2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." When she gives birth, Esau comes out first, and he is a red baby, covered in hair. Jacob comes out second, grasping Esau's heel. Foreshadowing? The boys grow up, Esau a skillful warrior, and Jacob a cozy little homebody, a mama's boy, making soup in the tents. Esau was Isaac's favorite son, and Jacob was Rebekah's. Esau trades his birthright to Jacob for some soup. Red lentil. And that's it, guys. That's how Jacob becomes the next successor of the greatest bloodline in history. He makes some really good soup. Now, a famine strikes again, and Isaac meets an old friend of the family. "Hello, Abimelech, king of Gerar. I too have a beautiful wife I'm going to lie to you about. No, while that would be hilarious, this is likely a different Abimelech than the one Abraham and Sarah ran into. Abimelech was the name given to Philistine kings, kind of like a title, the same way that the kings of Egypt are called pharaohs. But it is likely that this Abimelech is the son of the previous Abimelech that Abraham and Sarah had run into, which is even more hilarious that they're all repeating their parents' story. Because when the men of Gerar asked Isaac about his wife, he said, "She is my sister," because he was afraid to say, "She is my wife." He thought, "The men of this place might kill me on account of her because she is beautiful." Just like his father. Look what you did, Abraham. After they'd been there a long time, Abimelech looks down from a window and sees Isaac caressing his wife. He panics, of course, and gets Isaac in front of him. "She is really your wife. Why did you say she is my sister?" Isaac says, "I was scared." Abimelech says, "What is this you have done to us? One of the men might well have slept with your wife, and you would have brought guilt upon us." Do you think his father told him about Abraham and Sarah? This Abimelech gives orders to all the people. "Anyone who harms this man or his wife shall surely be put to death." Isaac plants crops there and becomes very wealthy until the locals tell him to get out. But they later form an alliance with him because it's clear that God's favor is upon him. Genesis 26 ends by telling us that Esau marries 2 Hittite women at the age of 40, Judith and Basemath. Isaac and Rebekah are grieved by this. They are pagan and not part of the intended direction of their bloodline, which Esau might not have known somehow, because it says later in chapter 28, when Isaac tells Jacob not to marry a Canaanite woman, Esau realizes how displeasing the Canaanite women were to his father Isaac and takes a 3rd wife from a relative bloodline, a granddaughter of Abraham through Ishmael. Isaac, man, why didn't you ever make such things clear to your kids? Especially when they were old enough to get married. Or better yet, when you knew he was going to get married to the Canaanite women, why didn't you say anything? You might not have been able to stop him if he was really set on it, but he would have known your honest stance on it. When Isaac is old and his eyesight is failing him, he seeks to bless his son Esau, and this is where the picking favorite children thing really becomes a problem. But God knew what was going to happen. He told Rebekah earlier when she was pregnant with the 2 of them, the older will serve the younger. And Rebekah's making sure that happens. Isaac tells Esau, "Go hunt me something, cook it up, and I'll bless you." Rebekah hears this, disguises Jacob to smell and feel like Esau by putting him in his brother's clothes and covering his exposed hands and neck with goat skins, because Esau is a hairy guy. And she prepares some food for him to take to his father as well and sends him on his lying way. Isaac has some doubts because he sounds like Jacob, but he does smell and feel like Esau. So he gives him the blessing for his firstborn. "Ah, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field that the Lord has blessed. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness, an abundance of grain and new wine. May nations serve you and peoples bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow down to you. May those who curse you be cursed, and those who bless you be blessed." Just to be clear, this isn't the Israel blessing. Esau wouldn't have become Israel if Jacob hadn't stolen his blessing. Jacob became Israel later on through a specific encounter he had with God, and Esau wouldn't have gotten it anyway because of his character. The man literally traded his birthright for soup, and God knew all of this was going to happen anyway. Jacob was always going to be Israel. Jacob leaves his father right before Esau comes back, and Isaac doesn't have a blessing for Esau, who is distraught. They both are. Isaac says, "Your brother came deceitfully and took your blessing. I don't have one for you." Esau asks, "Do you only have one blessing, my father? Bless me too, my father." And Isaac kind of blesses him. It doesn't sound great. "Your dwelling will be away from the earth's richness, away from the dew of heaven above. You will live by the sword and will serve your brother. But when you grow restless, you will throw his yoke from off your neck." Esau says he'll kill his brother Jacob after their father dies, and either these tents allow for no privacy, or the wives back then like to hide and eavesdrop, because Rebekah hears this and warns Jacob, telling him to flee to her brother Laban in Haran. A cool, honest guy. Isaac calls for Jacob, blesses him, and Jacob is sent on his way to find a wife that isn't a Canaanite. Jacob reaches his uncle's region and stops at a well covered by a stone that some shepherds are hanging around with their flocks. He asks the shepherds, "Do you know Laban, Naor's grandson?" They know him and they say, "Here comes his daughter Rachel, actually, with his sheep." Jacob says, "Look, the sun is still high. It is not time for the flocks to be gathered. Water the sheep and take them back to pasture." What he's really saying is, "Shoo, The pretty girl I've been looking for is coming. But they say we can't. The stone has to be rolled away from the mouth of the well, and then we can water our sheep. Rachel reaches the well with her flock, and Jacob rolls the stone away and waters his uncle's flock. Time to show his muscles off to Rachel. After doing so, he kisses Rachel and weeps. When Laban hears of Jacob, he brings Jacob to his home. After he works him for a bit, Laban asks Jacob what his wages should be. Jacob says, "I'll work for you for 7 years in return for your daughter Rachel," because he loved her. A lot. The 7 years felt only like a few days to him because of his love for her. And at the end of the 7 years, Jacob says to Laban, "Give me my wife. It's time." So they held the wedding, and when evening came, Laban brings Leah to Jacob instead, and Jacob consummates the marriage with her. When morning comes and Jacob sees that it's Leah, he's very upset, understandably. This poor guy just put 7 years into something his heart's really invested in just to get deceived. And it makes you wonder as well, did Rachel even love Jacob? She may have liked him, but it certainly doesn't seem like she loved him as much as he loved her. She would have had to agreed to getting swapped with her sister. That is heartbreaking for Jacob. When Jacob questions Laban why he was given Leah instead, Laban says, "It isn't our custom to give the younger daughter in marriage before the older one." You couldn't have mentioned that almost a decade ago when Jacob first made it clear he wanted the second daughter. In return for another 7 years of work, Laban gives Rachel to Jacob as well. Jacob finishes the bridal week with Leah, marries Rachel, loves her more, and works another 7 years. It's easy to feel bad for Leah here, and her situation is certainly sad. God pities her because her husband disregards her. It says in chapter 29, verse 31, when the Lord saw that Leah was not loved, he enabled her to conceive, but Rachel remained childless. It's just such a messy situation because of that lying uncle. And also, Jacob, maybe you could have picked up on some cues from Rachel if she didn't like you as much as you liked her. You didn't want Leah, but you have her now. I'm sorry. You have to treat her the way a husband should. Leah has 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, and Rachel, who certainly ate peaches and cream, yells at Jacob, "Give me children or I'll die." Jacob gets mad back because he's not God and can't do more about the situation than what he's already been doing, so Rachel pulls a Sarah. This discourse is occurring because there's already too many people in her marriage, yet she introduces a 4th and says to Jacob, "Here's my servant Bilhah, I can have children through her." Again, girl, I'm sorry you're going through this, but we know this doesn't work, Rachel. You're going to have your own children eventually, and you will like them more. Bilhah has 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. And Leah sees this and says, "I need to get back into the game or I'm going to lose this baby-making competition." So she too gives her servant Zilpah to Jacob, who has 2 sons, Gad and Asher. And I put blame on Abraham for agreeing to do this with Sarah. Jacob, I feel like his attitude in this is probably, it's just such a mess already. I don't care. Whatever these women want so that they don't yell at me. The whole dynamic of this family is depressing. I don't think anyone loves another. Jacob probably still loves Rachel, but Rachel treats him like a sack of grain. Leah's firstborn son Reuben gathers mandrakes one harvest, and Rachel trades time with Jacob to Leah for her son's mandrakes. In the conversation where she asks for some of the mandrakes, Leah responds, "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too?" Leah tells Jacob when he comes in from the fields, "You must sleep with me, I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." And she has a 5th son, Issachar. Does this seem like a situation where anyone is happy? Jacob isn't in the driver's seat of his family. He's not even in the passenger seat, he's in the trunk. The sister wives are in bitter rivalry, and how are the kids doing? Probably not that great. We'll look at some of the things they did later. Leah then has a 6th son, Zebulun, and then a daughter who she names Dinah. Poor Dinah. Chapter 30, verse 22 says, "Then God remembered Rachel, he listened to her and enabled her to conceive. She gets pregnant and gives birth to her firstborn, Joseph. After all the chaos of all these children being born, Jacob says to Laban, 'I'm getting out of here. Give me my wife and children, and I'll be on my way. I've been here working for you for how many years now?' Laban and Jacob discuss terms and agree that every speckled or spotted sheep, dark-colored lamb, and every spotted or speckled goat would be Jacob's. So Jacob starts selectively breeding the animals. Really smart. He builds a nice big strong flock for himself and leaves the weaker animals to Laban. Jacob hears that Laban's sons are talking about him. Jacob's taken everything from our father and has gained all his wealth from what belonged to our father. And Jacob notices that Laban's attitude towards him has also become not what it was. So God says, 'Go.' Go back to the land of your father and to your relatives, and I will be with you. Jacob tells Leah and Rachel, your dad doesn't like me anymore, we gotta go. Also, he's changed my wages 10 times in the years I've worked for him. Jacob, you should have left a long time ago. Leah and Rachel say, yeah, our dad sold us, got what he wanted in return, you've taken all this wealth that we might have gotten, our children are getting it now, we're good to go with you. So Jacob and his families flee, but not before Rachel steals false god idols from her father. Laban gives chase and is like, why did you run away with everyone? Jacob says he was scared Laban would take his wives from him. Like, dude, you're their husband. Literally just tell him no or something if he does. Laban is also looking for his stolen gods though, and Rachel just lies so that they can't search where she's hid them. I'm not a huge fan of Rachel's character. Am I allowed to say that? I know no one's perfect and we all need grace, but man, this book does not show many redeemable sides of her, if any. Wait, she was at one point at least, if she isn't anymore, a hard worker. She looked after her father's flocks. Jacob gets mad. Laban, you found nothing. What is my crime? Why have you hunted me down? Laban says, the women are my daughters, the children are my children, and the flocks are my flocks. Not how that works, and that's kind of weird. Laban, your daughters are adults, married with children of their own. It's time to let go, and those children are your grandchildren, not your children. That's a weird thing to say. And you agreed to give the portion of flock that Jacob has to Jacob. Greedy, controlling man. They make a covenant, eat a meal together, and go their separate ways in the morning. Oh my goodness, it's over. Jacob and Esau have a tearful reunion where no blood is shed and everything is great. The patriarch families were not perfect, and they themselves were not perfect. Jacob's affair was particularly exhausting. It just goes to show God loves us anyway. He chose a very messy line of people to bring us Jesus, our Savior. You may think your family's gone too far, or you yourself are too messy for the Jesus thing. Believe me, or believe in Jesus, you're not. There is worse things that happen in this bloodline, like what happens to Dinah, which we'll talk about in the next video, Jacob's sons and what could possibly go wrong there. I hope you enjoyed. I had a lot of fun making this. God bless.